that. so I won't run away from it. That's why I'll put it up front. But I want to talk about the health information system because I made a statement here that you'll be surprised to learn that in this fast, the world of artificial intelligence, etc., many countries are still struggling with the health information system. What actually do we mean? Just to give you a simple example, it happened to me 35 years ago. You'll be surprised to learn that it's still happening today, 35 years later. That's when HIV/AIDS was starting to manifest itself. I was running a practice in Sekhukhune. A gentleman entered my practice. After examining him, I concluded that he must be HIV positive. At that time, there was no rural facility that could even diagnose HIV, not to mention treating it. We just could not even diagnose it. What we used to do then, you apply to the bigger hospitals, which are all in Gauteng. In our case, it was the Den Garangua Hospital, which is called George Mukari. If it's urgent, you get an ambulance immediately, you transfer them. If it's not urgent, you apply and wait for a response. So I applied, described the symptoms, my findings, and said, please take over. I suspect this person is HIV positive. The response came within 2 weeks. They said, this man is our patient, is already on treatment for HIV and AIDS. We don't know why you want to start from the beginning. But that was happening because there's no integrated health information system. So what am I talking about? Any patient, even now in modern day South Africa, you can move from facility to facility in the public sector, from facility to facility in the private sector, from facility to facility between the private sector and the public sector, from doctor to doctor. You can move to 10 of them. All of them are likely to do the same thing to you because they simply won't know that this has already happened to you. There's no mechanism of knowing. And so that's why we want an integrated system. Now, fortunately, we have already gone to CSIR because we argued that South Africa has got a lot of knowledge and facilities which can do these things. We have gone to CSIR to ask them to develop a homegrown system because part of this problem is that there are many IT companies. Each one of them wants you to buy their product. And they'll tell you what it can do and all that, and you buy it, then another one comes. So we said, let's have a homegrown system, which is owned by us, which is open source, which nobody can claim. The CSIR has worked on it, health patient record system. We are now busy piloting it in the Free State. And just yesterday, we moved the pilot into a private practitioners to start including private practitioners around to see where we can integrate with them. So we are very happy about that piloting. And what we need to do is to accelerate it. Now, coming back to NHI, as I said, we are going to implement Section 57 immediately to make sure that we get going with transitional mechanism. But simultaneously, we are intending to run massive roadshows, workshops, and meet all the role players and relevant stakeholders to understand their concerns. The word that is reaching about NHI, in it, you will never hear any person, whether in parliament or outside or in the healthcare system, who will say, I'm against universal health coverage. They will all say we support universal health coverage, and then put a big but. And after that but, they will say, no, in the form in which it is, in NHI, we cannot support it. So our job is going to find out exactly in what form do you want it. What is that which you think, if put on the table, then you'll go along with it? And for what reason? We need to start dialoguing. South Africa is known for dialogue. It is not helpful what has happened last week. I'm not sure whether it's Friday or not. I was addressing a conference of general practitioners and specialists in Durban, a very, very important body in health. and on Saturday. And I received lots and lots of WhatsApp messages, people asking me, because there is a health insurance company, I think it's Momentum Health, which produce figures that this NHI that they are talking about is going to cost 1.5 trillion rand. That is 3 times what the country is spending on healthcare at the moment, in both public and private. I found this extremely unfortunate, in very bad taste. It is quite disturbing. It doesn't build a nation, because all it does is to create fear and uncertainty for people to live in fear. It's a scarecrow to scare them off that this system that the government wants to establish, it needs 1.3 trillion rand, which we do not have, of course. It's bigger than South Africa's budget. I found it quite unacceptable. And I think scaring people like that, to me, is tantamount to mathematical hooliganism, if you want me to put it that way. It's some form of mathematical hooliganism, which an advanced country like ours should not be doing. Because I'll tell you, if maybe you think it's very complex, or, you know, I'm not very clear. Minister Kubayi is a Minister of Human Settlement. Inside human settlement, there's a housing portfolio. If she announces that all South Africans must be housed, they must have a shelter, and a decent shelter, which she can, because it's part of constitutional rights of people. If she says so, then somebody rushes to Sandton or Constantia or Bantry Bay in Western Cape. I hope I got it correct. And look for the most expensive houses that are owned by billionaires, and take the price of that house and multiply by 61 and say, Minister Kubayi, this is what he wants to give to you. You know, isn't that some hooliganism of some sort? Because the country will live in extreme fear and disturbance. It can't be accepted. Yes, yes. That's why I'm using the word mathematical hooliganism. And I think I'm right. Because you can't do mathematics to scare people, and especially do mathematics in such a grossly wrong way. And why am I saying that? Who told them that in NHI? We're just going to say every South African must get health care and pay whatever amount, and the state pay whatever amount. Perhaps you may not understand me. Let me give you a very simple example. I like leading by simple examples. If you go to Soweto, or right here to Katlehong, or whatever township is there, and take your child for a circumcision from a GP, a qualified doctor, who spent 6 years at medical school, they are going to do that circumcision and charge you 1,800 rand. That's what they will charge you. But if you go to a private hospital, you are going to pay between 15,000 rand and 18,000 rand. That's what's going to happen. Because what then they will do, they will look for a specialist, urologist. Because private hospitals are mostly run by specialists. They'll get a urologist. A urologist as a specialist has trained for 15 years to be where they are. When they say somebody is a specialist, from the day you enter medical school until we give you a title of a specialist, you have trained for 15 years. They are going to look for such a person. Secondly, they are going to look for a neurologist, another specialist who trained for 15 years. They be a urologist who trained for 15 years. Secondly, they will look for an anesthetist who must put you to sleep, which is completely unnecessary, completely, because circumcision are done under local anesthetic. But they will put you to sleep. The anesthetist is also a specialist who trained for 15 years. Then they will look for somebody who is an assistant to the urologist, who will be a junior doctor like me. When I say junior, somebody who passed MBCHB. They will all need their fees, and the hospital will need their fees. Why should we follow such a system? And that calculation is based on us following that type of those type of systems, which are very prevalent in our country, making healthcare unnecessarily very expensive. We won't follow that, obviously, but Momentum Life is assuming we'll do that. Secondly, they are assuming that when we introduce NHI, all the public facilities will be rendered irrelevant. Everybody will go to a private facility. What do I do with Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital? What do we do with Groote Hospital, Tygerberg, Charlotte Maxeke, all these huge hospitals in Gauteng, for instance, which is the biggest healthcare system in the whole continent? We just throw them away and say there's NHI, everybody must go private and go and pay 18,000 rand for a circumcision, and NHI will pay. That's not what we are going to do. So it is misleading people and it's unacceptable. On the issue of healthcare delivery system, I spoke about HIV and AIDS. We are following the 95, 95, 95. Up to so far, we have tamed HIV and AIDS. Life expectancy has gone high, especially for women. Maternal mortality and child mortality has markedly reduced, but by no means have we done away with NHI. Yes, and mother-to-child transmission is very low. I remember in 2004, 70,000 babies were born HIV positive every year by 2004. After putting up a massive prevention of mother transition program, by the time I left the Department of Health, there were only 6,000 who were born HIV positive. I don't know where it is now, they've not yet reported to me, but we want it to come to zero. So we want to look at a massive program on this issue of HIV and AIDS. Let me stop there and leave it to questions.
Let's take hands for those who have questions. This time around, I'm starting on my left. Kize, Shannon, you'll be the third one. Junior, fourth. Aviwa, your hand is up. Fifth. Debo, sixth. Business Day, I see you there. 7. News 24, see you.
What the heck means?
Mawande, I see you. Ruth, I see you as well. You're in front of me, so you're honest with your last one.
From Mmamoloko Power Podcast.
From what?
Respect Power Podcast.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's how we.
Okay.
This question goes to Mmamoloko Nkabane and to Doctor.
She's also a doctor.
She's also a doctor. Okay, okay. No, Mama Kubayi. Yeah. In terms of education, what assessment method do you use in terms of assessing the takes in of children from from basic education all the way to varsity, in comparison to how the economy is functioning, so that they can be placed into the economy? What assessment do you from basic education, varsity, and to workplace? What assessment method do you use in such to make sure that you eliminate the unemployment and then in terms of Minister Motsoaledi, in terms of the earlier we had the policy minister, in terms of ukusebenzisana for social ills, for instance, is there a interlink with your department?
Minister of Police.
Of Police, yes, Minister. Remember that depression is caused by social ills, some of the social ills, and then it leads to criminal elements. So, is there an interlink communication or program that you and as well as the basic education as well, because from basic all the way up. That's all my question. That's all. Thank you.
Shannon?
Good afternoon. Shannon Merricks from Kasi Broadcasting Africa. I think now we are talking economics. I must give my title. All protocol observed. I'm the executive chairperson of Kasi Broadcasting Africa. And I have to do this deliberately because we're talking economics. The president in his State of the Nation, he talks about the economics, you know, when I was listening to him reading, I said, this makes sense. This is the only way you're going to solve, whether it's crime, health, NASFAS, whatever. You need to say, let's put a straight issue on the table, which is the economic, creating jobs and so on. Now that that's on the table, on health, I think the minister is, you know, is nice. The minister is saying, or let me say, I'm saying what you are saying. I'm not saying you're saying, I'm saying. You are saying the NHI, everything in the media has been a miscalculation. There's only been negative reports about the NHI. You can agree or disagree with me. But there's not been one positive article in the media about NHI, and I read as well. Now, when we look at NHI, when we look at NASFAS, now I'm just going to put them all in one pot. You have industrial parks in Soweto. You have Baragwana. You have a university in Soweto. You have Maponya Mall. But here you have industrial parks. Orlando Industrial Park, Jabulani, Fine Town. You have all those. And within 5 kilometers, there's a hospital. There's over 25 schools. There's all these things that needs to buy goods and services, whether it's linen, whether it's tables, whether it's chairs, whatever. But as the president put it, we need to reactivate or get the things going. So what is the plan to do the simple things, not the difficult things, the smart city and that, to say we need tables for the schools. Where's the closest industrial park? Because they are there in all townships. 100 townships in South Africa, there is already industrial park. How do we say to those small businesses in that industrial parks, in 7 days, because the support is there from the economic cluster, you're not paying rent, the state will pay your rent, you're not paying water, you're not paying lights, you have to be a South African, you have to create 6 jobs, you have to be registered for tax and so on. You know, in those industrial parks, I think 10,000 jobs can be created in less than a month. Then every South African, those 10 million that didn't vote, will say, yes, there's the simple things are done. Let's now wait for the difficult things, the smart city and so on. With NSFAS as well, the state is putting money into student accommodation, into security, into transport. But how do you filter that money? And I want to be, how do you filter that money to benefit blacks? Because in Joburg, those buildings are owned majority by whites. It's demographics. But if people in Soweto can provide accommodation, if people in township, you can then empower a family. A Magogo can clean the 6-room or 10-room, whatever the case be. And that's how we lift people out of poverty. I think my airtime is finished for the ANC briefings. Thank you.
I'm going to give him a tag as a delegate. This is what it does. You are next.
Hello, yes. I'm Nellie Payton from Reuters. I also have a question on the NHI.
Sorry?
I'm with Reuters. Nellie Payton.
Reuters.
Oh,
yeah.
Minister, you said that you want to start implementing Section 57 immediately. Could you give a few more specifics on what that means, what actions will be taken in the next weeks or months? And also, is opposition to the NHI within the GNU creating any obstacles at this stage to that rollout, or do you still need to work on getting other people on board, or are you just moving ahead with the implementation? Thanks.
Junior?
Junior Kubayi from News of Africa. My question is also on NHI. Minister, you spoke about wanting to roll out assuming that there was a lot of public engagement before the bill became an act. So why is there another need to roll out this public engagement?
Thank you. Abdullah ENCA. Just maybe on NHI as well. Do we have time frame, Minister, when the President will sign it into effect? On the Bella Bill, Dr. Nkabane.
Just come again. Time frame for what?
NHI amendment will be signed into effect by the President.
It has been signed.
It has been signed in May. How did you miss that? It was a big ceremony. Everyone.
Dr. Nkabane, just on the Bella Bill, it seems like the Minister of Basic Education wanted to be sent back to Parliament. Are you seeing eye to eye with the Minister when it comes to the Bella Bill?
Okay, my name is Cde. I'm with the SAPC. Minister, my question is to Minister Kubayi. It's a clarity-seeking question. Minister, I heard you talking about the new economic policy in the next 10 years. Is this related to the COVID? It's a new economic policy for the country. Yes, I think I'm fine, but if it's something that is only related to the COVID-19. With South Africa, Minister, in the most unequal society in the world, and unemployment standing at around 40%. Do you think for the past 30 years, all the economic fundamentals and the economic, I would say, policies that we had as government, do you think those economic policies are answerable to the challenges that South Africans are facing? And this is based on the tangible or the empirical evidence on the ground that says, really, South Africa, there is no really turning back in terms of arresting this problem of unemployment, this problem of us being seen as the most unequal society in the world. Do you think those policies, economic policies that were adopted in 1996, some people call them the 1996 trust program, do you think they are answerable to the problems that we face in South Africa? And I got another question from one of my colleagues from Base. They're asking me, they said I must ask a question that they've seen that global markets are falling in the US. Is that the case in South Africa? Is there any impact on South African markets?
My name is Mmamoloko from the Business Day. Did the ETC discuss how the current SRD grant can be used as a basis for permanent income support for the unemployed? This is as the Treasury reins in on public spending and public debt in a bid to improve fiscal health. Also, did the lekgotla discuss how to link social assistance with other forms of support as a poverty reduction mechanism? Also, considering that there is litigation against the implementation of the NHI, this is for the Minister of Health, do you think that the government will be required to revise its timelines of the Act's implementation, including phase 2, which is mobilization of financial resources? Thank you.
Let me be clear. Are you saying we must revise our time frames? Is that the question?
Because of the litigation. So I'm asking if the litigation will push back the time frames, and then that will make it required to be revised. Because my understanding is that the first phase is supposed to be implemented from 2023 to 2026, and then there's a next phase in that.
Apologies if I missed this part. I did step out for a bit. Did this commission subcommittee speak about talk to basic income grants? 2 weeks before the elections, the ANC announced that it would deliver a BIG within 2 years policy. Was it an election gimmick? The other day we had the DSG say that South Africans have raised the alarm to say that they suspect the ANC does these election gimmicks towards elections, Was the announcement that BIG would come in 2 years part of electioneering, or did this commission speak about expediting the delivery at all? Thank you.
Sure. Good afternoon, leadership. My name is Mmamoloko from the Sunday World. Maybe let me write on what President said, Minister Kubayi, around BIG. But my question is, you speak, for instance, about the cost of living that is too high, a grocery basket of 3.5 comparison to 4 point something minimum wage. How do you align the three, for instance? You, as you correctly put it, 3.5 basic grocery basket, it's 4.1, 4 point something minimum wage. This BIG, do you align with those numbers, or do we continue with, is it what, 370 now? The thing, the COVID thing, 370, that used to be 350. How do you align the three to ensure that you don't have people who are aggrieved, as you say, which one of the reasons that people were aggrieved is that you have these imbalances where minimum wage hasn't even come close to covering total cost of the household. How do you then, when you do that BIG, make sure that it addresses those questions? Nkabane, on the issue of skills revolution, you speak about the review of the curriculum to meet the needs of the economy. How far do you go with that? Do you totally overhaul the curriculum? In fact, what are the identified problems with the current curriculum that South Africa has? And in fact, most probably at universities, higher education courses that are offered at that level, and how do you fix those going forward? Mmamoloko Kubayi, on the big elephant in the room, NHI. So when you talk about these massive roadshows and workshops that you are going to do to meet stakeholders and stakeholders to understand their concern, what is the intention of doing this? Because this thing is gone now. Someone would say, okay, are you guys pulling wool over our eyes, or are you starting the process of it? Like, can you just explain what is it that you intend to achieve with this roadshows of meeting stakeholders and everyone else that is concerned about NHI in its current form? Is it likely to be reviewed if there's an overwhelming view that in its current form it won't work? And who do you listen to? Because also there will be a lot of lobbies from powerful forces, others, and then there will be the man on the street who is probably happy with it in its current form, but doesn't have the power to lobby and elevate their voices, for instance, in platforms like the ones we offer as mainstream media. How do you balance those views in such that you don't elevate one view against a view that might be popular, but is not, is not reverberated in the mainstream media? How do you address those things?
EWM? Oh, no, Lunga, you come afterwards. Yeah. Next.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Minister Spitzo, News. Minister, rising non-communicable diseases. Now a looming health crisis in the country, and the World Health Organization is also reporting that not only South Africa but throughout the world globally, making us, or maybe telling us about cardiovascular diseases, respiratory diseases, cancers, and diabetes, and something which is very much closer to my minister. Minister, in the past, when HIV started, we used to have public awareness. And currently now, because of this diseases now, we're starting to see them. We don't have such. What is the NHI telling us, Minister? When are we going to have this public awareness, Minister, so that we educate people? I'll give you an example, Minister. I engage a lot with people living with diabetes because I'm a warrior. Most of them, Minister, who've lived with the disease for 10, 15 years, even today, they don't know the difference between type 1 and type 2 because of lack of education. And I give myself time to try to explain to them and to teach them about that. So people need that, Minister, where we are, public education or awareness on these NCDs. Thank you.
UFM?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Mmamoloko from UFM. Minister Motsoaledi, on the cost of NHI, there's been concern that the public health system is already overburdened. In particular, having to service foreign nationals. I would have seen an attempt in the past by then MEC for Health in Limpopo, Ramatuba, to say the neighboring countries should perhaps find a way of compensating South Africa. Has that part of the expense been considered as to where will the money for that come from? And then a question on the economy, Kubayi, successive ANC conferences have decided on mineral beneficiation, but that's all we have had. We've not seen much implementation of that. And I heard now in your presentation that you just mentioned it very little in passing, if I could put it like that. Is it something that the ANC has given up on to say it's not possible? This is how, because I'm tying that to your ambition of embarking on a massive industrialization project as to how do you industrialize when you are unable to do that basic part of it. Thank you.
Lunga, the last one. Yes,
thank you very much. My name is Lunga from the Mail and Guardian. Minister Motsoaledi, just on the NHI, maybe to just clear things up. We know obviously it's been signed into law, but when is it that we are going to go to 911 without having to worry about medical aid? Just the date to say, okay, maybe by this is when we can walk in NEC for free. That, because that's I think that's what people want to know, to say when. We know that you are implementing it, but when? And on the issue of job creation, Minister Kubayi, how does government, because in the past 30 years there have been a lot of issues, how does government now create those jobs, and in what areas would government be necessarily focused on, in areas where they basically create jobs? What are some of those areas you've been looking at to say, okay, this is where government is looking to create a certain number of jobs in such industries? And also I wanted to ask about the issues like things like NYPA. Do those things even still work? Do people benefit from such things? And what are those some initiatives that government is trying and maybe will create for entrepreneurs to actually flourish? Because I don't know if anyone, these things of NYPA, but yeah, I don't know, but yeah, that's basically my questions. Thank you.
Okay, we will respond now. Ulu is going to join Shannon soon and be a delegate inside. You can start on that side and come this way.
You have to move, maybe. Because I was saying, yeah, I did the next one. Yeah, I did the next one. But you should finally move.
Una gonna back. So get
No, thanks, Comrade Zuko and comrades and all of you. I'll take few questions. The first one, I'll pick two. Chair, yes, the issue of industrial parks is quite important for our economy to grow. We've got special economic zones and we've got industrial parks. But what has been a problem before is the securing stable and sustainable market for SMMEs in those industrial parks. And how are we going to address this issue going forward? As you correctly say, there are those light industries that you get in industrial parks, dealing with clothing, manufacturing of furniture, chemicals and digitants and all of that. We have passed the act now, which is Public Procurement Act. It is enacted, it is in place. It now allows us to have set aside. You will then have set aside based on one sectors of the community you want to target. Set aside for women, but set aside for localization. And that could be a district or the operating industrial or entities in those industrial parks. And to then go further and enhance that, the lekgotla agreed that the National School of Government, as well as relevant department that deals with training on procurement, must engage on immediate and urgent program to train SCM and CFO on how to implement this public procurement, which will help us to address and achieve set-asides. And that will go a long way also in addressing the monopoly in terms of the structure of the economy. May I then take, maybe on the issue of student accommodation, I hope we will meet soon with the minister at the government level. The Department of Public Works and Infrastructure has adopted a program called Asset Optimization Plan. That strategy talks to optimizing on public assets, the buildings. The real custodian of properties, Public Works, a number of buildings that are not utilized. We're saying those buildings could be offered to the Department of Higher Education, either through the private sector, to renovate, operate, and then we transfer later to government. And that was presented in the previous administration. The strategy was adopted. My final issue, as I'll be allowed to join the plenary, is where are these new jobs coming from? We said from now till 2025, let's develop an industrial plan, an economic plan, based on, one, the fiscal and macro instruments, but based on, one, energy, transport and logistics, and all that becomes your input cost in any production. So let's look on that and look futuristic. But for now, where are these plans? We have master plans that we have already put in place. A master plan on your automotive sector, be a master plan on poultry, on sugar, a master plan. There are few, I think there are 4 or 5. 8. So we're saying let us start implementing those master plans in a very, very localized approach and industrialized approach. So the first is expected to come from there. But lastly, we say infrastructure should continue to be the catalyst for job creation. And as Comrade Kubayi reported, we are saying let's have a catalytic project packaged and implemented in a way that grows the country. What are the examples? It is Operation Ukuvuselela, the railway from Pretoria to Gqeberha. It is the railway from here in Johannesburg to your Polokwane, the railway from Johannesburg to Durban. These impact, high impact projects that we say should be catalytic. And then we must package that and ensure that they are implemented going forward. I thought I'll contribute on those too. Thank you, and leave others.
I'm also going to respond on either 2 or 3 issues that have been raised. The first question that has been raised by Balungile Mkhize around the measures that were put in place to ensure progression of our learners from basic to high school, which is high school then post-education. Yeah. You know, in our interventions that we come up with, we are guided by the Constitution. It is an obligation that each and every learner or person in South Africa must be afforded that opportunity for schooling and learning, which is Section 29 of the Constitution. Balungile, you know, there is a set narrative that I came up with when I had an engagement with Minister Blade Nzimande. It's saying there is a study that he once read, and the findings are that in South Africa currently, the intake out of 100 learners that are enrolled in basic education, out of that 100, the people that then progress to university are only 4. And then out of that 4, there is only 2 that complete their qualifications within a record time. These other 2, they either drop out or they've got some modules that, you say it's what the thing? The subs or whatever, or you fail. So our interventions then are trying to then rectify that problem. As much as we do not have systems in place to assess how many then do they succeed in terms of post-education system. But what we are trying to do in terms of our interventions is to ensure that there is access to education, there is success, there is quality of learning and teaching, as well as responsiveness. What we have done to try to close that gap or to balance the gap that you have identified is to establish cities. There are centers in our communities which are called community education training centers. So they were trying to close the gap of those who couldn't make it either to the universities or to TVET colleges, so that they are able to learn how to write, how to read, and then to get some of the technical skills for them to be able to make means out of that. So those are the measures that we have put in place. However, on top of that, there is a committee which is called Human Resource Development Committee, which is chaired by the Deputy President in South Africa, and the department, the minister in the department is more of a secretariat. It has got a number of goals. The first one is to improve early childhood learning and schooling. Then the second one is improving employability, responsiveness, as well as governance. So we are indeed trying by all means to close the gap that you have identified. The second question, I think it was coming from Mawande, around skills revolution, is it? Yeah. So Mawande, it is not going to be a total overhaul. We are going to be guided, obviously, by the industrial plan that my sister here, Mmamoloko, spoke about, and Comrade Zikalala. But what we are doing, we're mapping skills needs per province, because, you know, our provinces are not the same. Others, they are strong in terms of agriculture. Others are very strong in terms of mining. As I'm talking to you today, amongst the resolutions that were taken in this lekgotla is to establish 2 universities that are going to focus on mining, in Limpopo as well as Northwest, because those are mining communities. So we want to emphasize mineral processing. We want to establish not a university, faculty of mining in those 2 provinces, because what we have established is that Limpopo, Northwest, and Northern Cape, they are the mining belts of South Africa, hence they do have the current minerals that we have, as well as the minerals of the future that are going to contribute into inclusive economic growth of the country. So we want to bring in those skills that are in need in our economies that are going to respond to potential industries that are going to be established moving forward, with the expansion of our TVET colleges, and then looking at the curriculum to meet those needs. The last part is Bella Bill. You know, we shouldn't enter into the debate of saying whether you see eye to eye or whatever. The reality of the matter as we stand is that the ANC is advancing in terms of transformation of basic education in South Africa. We are responding to the needs of our people, in particular the poorest of the poor. So what is happening? The bill is currently in the office of the president, and it is going to be promulgated. Thank you.
There's no second round.
Oh, I see her going away.
No, you
Okay.
Thank you very much. On the issue, maybe just to pick up on what Comrade Nobuhle spoke about, a viewer on the Bella Bill, noting what the minister, I did see what the minister said. And perhaps one of the things that colleagues in the media, but also the public, will have to consistently remember, as ministers, we might have opinions, but we act collectively, and we are collectively and individually accountable. So the powers of a minister in terms of Section 91 of the Constitution are delegated by the President. So a best way as a minister when you have a different view of a decision of a cabinet, because that bill did not go to Parliament from a minister of basic education. It went through cabinet. It is decision of a cabinet. So the correct way is for a minister to go back to cabinet and explain the differences and convince cabinet, because it's not a decision then of Minister Motsoaledi. It's a decision. Bella Bill was approved by cabinet to be submitted to Parliament. So it's a decision of cabinet. So Section 91 and Section 92 does give us parameters as ministers of how to operate and how not to operate. I think that closes the chapter. Until the minister goes to us as members of cabinet collectively and convinces us that why the president shouldn't sign, I don't think it's appropriate for having to comment in the public. Coming to the issue, I think, Shannon, you spoke about the issues of where the jobs will come. And just quick one, I won't take long. What we did to plenary and to ANC, we went and looked at the composition of where jobs are, and I think some of the colleagues spoke about that. I think you asked, Lunga, where will these jobs come from? When you look at how the sectors contribute to the jobs, for example, the biggest contributor, and we were trying to make sense of whether those sectors will continue to be the growth for us to expand in terms of the jobs, or whether we'll have to go back to some of the areas where they're suppressed to be able to support them and get the jobs from. So, for example, currently you would have what we call community, social, and personal services contributing 24% of the jobs, followed by trade, catering, and accommodation, 20%. Now, when you look at trade, catering, and accommodation, the outcry is that majority of the people in this 20% are non-South Africans. And that's why one of the pronouncements is to say, we should be able to say some of the jobs must be preserved for South Africans. And most of us, as we grew up, would know that even as students, we could go and work in retailers, as part-timers in restaurants, and first time as you graduated from school, the first thing you could do, you would not stay at home. You'd be able to find a job in a retailer. And that assisted a lot in terms of the job. So we were paying attention to that to see. But when you look at construction, construction is currently contributing 7.5% in the jobs, but it's currently, it's actually a 2.4% in the GDP. Now, construction has potential to grow. And we looked at what are the other issues that are affecting us to be able to get more in terms of the jobs, but also contribute more. Because previously, if you look at the statistics around 2008 and before, you'd find that construction was around 8% contribution to GDP. So it has shrunk. Now, part of what we had to pay attention to is issues to say safety and security must help us with the issues around construction mafias. Because today to construct, it takes longer and it's more expensive. So that's why you've got to be able to look at those things. Now, this is what we are doing with the jobs. It's not saying that government alone. So I'm answering two questions, two colleagues. I think it's Shannon and also Lunga. Government has a role to play in creating a conducive environment, enabling, for example, the mining licenses that has to come so that we can bump up a lot of mining licenses and mining rights to be given. But secondly, in terms of the energy security, we know that when we had load shedding, quite a number of mines reduced in terms of productivity, and therefore the jobs were affected. So it's part of the role that we have to play in intervening, responding to the restrictions or constraints, but equally when we play our role as government is to look at our areas. For example, what we have been doing in presidential stimulus job creation, those then will come in. So we'll play a role in terms of ensuring that where we have vacancies, we must fill them, because we can't talk about job creation when majority of the departments do not fill vacancies, sit with more than 20% of vacancy rate. So that's part of what we're emphasizing, is a balancing act that we understand private sector and public has a role in playing in terms of the issues. I think the issue of SMME can be emphasized. That's why we are bringing it to the center as well. That we don't want just SMMEs to be supported in terms of funding. One, consumption of products produced by local businesses, SMMEs. And one, that's why we made one of the examples as school nutrition. You are coming to the hospitals, who makes the linen? And Comrade Motsoaledi will have to come back and tell us how they are also ensuring that we can. I was saying to the colleagues there, some of them, that the inclusion of even the public procurement bill actually is an enabler, but it doesn't preclude, no law actually stopped us from ensuring that we can implement set aside. For example, in human settlements, we're already implementing 40% set aside for women, 50%, and we can account out of our budget in terms of construction how many women in business. That's why we were able to sign an social compact with them. So we are saying we are going to monitor now. Each department must account. Comrade Motsoaledi will have to account. He's not in the ETC, but because he runs a major department, will have to come and tell us how is he supporting SMMEs. So we want to see this tangible work, and we are saying the state is the biggest procurer, and therefore we should be able to utilize the levers of the state to be able to intervene and deal with poverty and unemployment. The reality today is that more people are living in poverty. That we can't run away from. I was saying to the colleagues, we read a study, and it's coming to what Ndebo was saying. We read a study about 40% of people in Soweto living with one meal that is not even full nutritious. And that tells you, because previously we would have identified districts. I don't know if you remember when we dealt with war on poverty during the Thabo Mbeki era, and I'll come to what you were raising. And one of the issues we would identify, for example, Msinga. And the intervention there today are still relevant, because what we did when we intervened in Msinga, we made sure that people who did not have access to IDs, passport, not ID, birth certificates and all that, because they were not accessing schools, they were not able to access social packages. And that intervention, even in turning around that situation, was able to open opportunities in terms of that community. It's far better compared to that time when you look at it. The second community that we intervened at that time was Lusikisiki. When you look at Lusikisiki pre-2006 to Lusikisiki today, you see that the interventions, which were based on economic interventions, were actually have turned the situation around. Now, but what we are facing today is because the cost of living has gone up higher. Now, what we would have put as interventions as government, social packages, and I'm coming to the issues of big, it's not really making meaningful intervention in the hands of South Africans. Because if we are giving a social grant of 1,900 to a senior citizen, previously in 2007, that was a lot of money in the hands of a senior citizen, and they were able to raise children. That's why you'd have, for example, I was in Gqeberha in the election, where we had first-time voters saying, I am voting ANC because my grandmother raised me and I was able to go to university, finish my school because I was supported by a grant of my grandparent. And the fear we have, and all of us today, is will that grant today be able to support that child that exists, to be able to go through high school and be able to enter university? That's the question this 7th administration, which is a GNU-led government, will have to answer. But overall, when you look at over policy, and we did that roadmap in the plenary of what we did, Ready to Govern 1990, RDP 1994, and the elements of it, GEAR 1996, ASKISA 2005, NGP New Growth Path to 2010, and NDP 2012. And then we looked at the elements of it all round, and we found similarities. So the issue from a policy point of view, it has been consistent to identify the issues. For example, as back as RDP 1994, we spoke about structural reforms, which we are talking to today. Now, the issue has been the direct implementation of those policies. And that's why ANC previously would have acknowledged that from a policy point of view, we've never lacked. What we have lacked, or we have been found shortfall of, has been on the implementation. And that's why when we did the ERRP, we went and put mechanisms in place to be able to implement, and we could account for almost 90% of achievements in terms of the ERRP as we closed it last year. Now, that's what we are taking as lessons when we go forward. What we are seeing is a growth of a population that, if you look at the population between 1994 or 1996 first census and 2022, there's been 20 million additional people. That's a huge number for a country to deal with. And now, whatever you've been able to build, so if you've been able to provide houses, the rate might be, the number might be higher, but because it's not growing in the manner that the population is growing, it's not showing the impact. And that's why Census 2022 assists us now. And that's why many of us are emphasizing the need to use data as a decision-making process. Hence, we can tell you about what we are seeing now in households in terms of the data that is coming out. And the data that comes out, for example, I hope Comrade Motsoaledi one day will share what is happening to a girl child, black girl child in South Africa, which is worrying. Because that we are going to see the impact in 10 to 15 years. They're becoming pregnant as teenagers or children, but more are leaving schools because they have to be caregivers of their own children or others. And when you look at that, when you look at statistics, it's telling us today, we are going to see the impact 10 years down the line. Now, that's why we are starting to say, let's pay attention to what statistics is saying to us and determine 10 years what will happen. Hence, the decision of a new policy that needs to respond to what we have today, but anticipating 10 to 15 years, obviously, beyond, to say this is what we'll have to grapple with going forward. So I hope I've been able to deal broadly with those issues and in terms of the areas. Now, coming to issues of basic income grant that Semtanga and Mawande raised, maybe just to correct, Mawande, 370 is not basic income grant. It's social relief of distress, a grant of distress. So we've not implemented BIC as South Africa. We've committed to looking at BIC. So we said we'll utilize the SRD as a basis to learn and take lessons from there to be able to implement BIC. Now, and Semtana is asking, was it an election gimmick? It's not an election gimmick. When you look at what Niva Makhetla would have written, I think, an ABBA about poverty and how households have to be intervened and the obligation on the state to intervene to alleviate poverty. It tells us that we have no option but to implement BIC as a country. Now, the challenge we have, and that Minister of Finance will be correct, where is the source of funding for BIC? And that's what we must answer. Whether it's going to come from tax, others are saying we are already overtaxed. Whether it's going to come from reprioritization, we'll have to look at it. But the lessons out of SRD tells us that there are people, for example, in terms of our system, that have benefited that shouldn't have. So you need to clean up that system. Secondly, is the mechanism that you provide the BIC, the social grant. Because most of the time you find that when you allocate 14 billion, then you can end up with 5 billion going into the process. That's what we need to deal with so that we see value out of the money. So once we are ready to say we are ready to implement, the mechanisms have been finalized between all of us, we'll be able to implement. What we can say is that there is a need for BIC. there is a need for us to intervene. The modalities have to be finalized and how it's going to be. Others are arguing that it has to have exit strategy. It must be linked to some sort of training. You can't just go into big without any conditionality. But others are arguing that NGOs are saying no conditions, which I don't agree to. For example, as chair of ETC and from an ETC point of view, that we can't have that because there must be an exit. Because it's an intervention for people to be able to find. They must be linked to skills so that they are able to exit. So it's those modalities that we must finalize around big. I think I've been able to answer. Okay, the issues around mining, what we acknowledge, yes, and I think the Youth League is hard on us on this one, on beneficiation. We would have had them even in their press briefing, that we've not been able to tangibly beneficiate. Now, there are various, and somebody can say it's excuses that we are giving. But one of the things that we have acknowledged as ETC is that let's utilize the licensing environment and the new conditions that we give into the minerals of the future, the new licensing of your lithium, your copper, and all those things, as part of putting the issues of beneficiency linked to it. And that we believe that is easy to do, while the Department of Mineral Resources, we still give them the responsibility to be able to ensure that even issues of royalty have been raised, that we must be able to take the issues of royalty to be able to benefit, for example, be able to create a fund that can be used in the society and benefit communities. But secondly, in terms of being able to still beneficiate. So the commitment is still there. I'm not reading it in passing. I think when we did manifesto, I did highlight it and spoke to it quite in detail. So that's why I just went over it at this point. But that commitment remains. Whether we are committed and will be able to see it, linking it with industrialization. One of the things that would have been in the few years, while we would have wanted to do beneficiation and industrialization, we must acknowledge that load shedding was a stumbling block in that process. It was a constraint. Because there is no way you can increase burning of smelters and doing all those things when you do not have energy security. And that's why we had to pay attention to the energy security to be able to deal with that. Last point, the issue of NYDA. NYDA remains a critical institution for young people. There are many beneficiaries there. I think what we need to look at is the funding model. What we give to NYDA is not sufficient. I think we must acknowledge. When you look at their budget, I think it's almost about 700 million. That's why their impact will not be felt. But where you've been able to meet individuals who have benefited from NYDA, they do share a positive story. But what we said to NYDA, many of us, is that let them partner with various departments. There's opportunity to partner with trade and industry. Deputy Minister here is a young person, should be able to drive the issues of young people and benefiting and partner with NYDA so that their impact can be felt broader. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So before you move, Minister, but you didn't answer. I said,
which one?
This side is saying SRD, what, 370, this side 3. How do you align? I mean, how do you expect someone who earns 370 to afford the 3.5 food basket? That's what I asked.
Oh, sorry. I answered, so the second part of your question I didn't answer. Yeah. That one of the 370, I was answering in the big, I linked it to Siamtanda. The issue is acknowledgement. Remember when we did the 350, it was during COVID. So we intervened during COVID to be able to give some level of relief. And it was based on what the state can afford. So there was various mechanisms that were intervened with the workers through UIF, with SMMEs and them. Now, where we are now is to say, let's deal with the issue of poverty in detail. Let's analyze. It's not only the 350 that we are analyzing in terms of affordability. It's also the issue of a general worker who is a person who's employed in a department of human settlements as a cleaner, is earning 4,700 or 5,000. And that person has to take a transport staying in Mmamoloko to come to Pretoria. The amount of money that that person pays in transport, the amount of money that person has to spend on food makes it unaffordable. And that's why we are saying we've got to deal with the issue of affordability, how the cost of food basket is, reduce them, and VAT removal, zero rated, number one. Number two, we must address the cost of transport. And that's why we're talking about the issue of levies in the fuel levy. Because when you look at the fuel levy, the amount we pay for fuel and the amount we pay for tax is higher. And that's why some people will compare us to Botswana. Why Botswana petrol is less than ours? It's because of the tax. So we are saying, let's review that system. And we were acknowledging that Minister Enoch Godongwana might not be happy. But it's something that we've got to look at. And the president has committed to say we must look at it. Again, the other issue was saying, in municipalities, there are grants that we give from national to municipalities in order to support households. What we're doing as an analysis is that those grants or support for households are not reaching households. They are at municipalities, for example. What you have as the equitable share, then pays for your consultants, pays for staff, doesn't reach the indigent person. And we are saying, let's review to be able to reach the indigent person. So those are the interventions that we want to do. When we introduce big, 350 will fall off. And that's why we want to phase it off as part of introducing big. And the category and the conditions will be different to what we have. But definitely for those who deserving have to support, because we can't have people going to bed without food. I think even Deborah raised the issue of economic policy versus the COVID-19. What I was explaining was that the ERRP was particular to intervene in COVID, so it has come to an end by 2023 December. That's why now we need an economic policy to take us from here forward, because the basis of that will be from the our NDP 2030. NDP just have a chapter that says do the following. So we've got to be expansive in the explanation, but also deal with what we're saying in manufacturing in detail, in industrialization in detail, in beneficiation in detail. So that policy then will take us forward in holistically and take us beyond the pedestrian growth that we've been able to see. Thank you. As a country, we operate within the global markets. So when global markets are affected, we are affected, obviously. There's been concerns around what is happening in the US. Recently, there was a study as well released by US in terms of what they have been able to get affected by their constraints on China. Heating on China and the restrictions that they put on China, which negatively affected their own companies. I think they've lost about $135 billion in investment because of that. So we do get affected, and JSE will react in a manner that says, because many of them would be, our bonds are bought from external. So when there are external shocks, what we call external environmental shocks, we do get affected. And that's why the rand as well will react based on what happens in either Europe or in the US markets. So what we have to do from our side is consistently to monitor the impact and find mechanisms to absorb the shocks so that we don't get hit hard. And that's why every time, continuously, not only that, the war in the Middle East continues because the logistics in the Red Sea gets affected, we get affected. As long as those conflicts are not resolved, we continue to be affected. The elections that are coming that are uncertain in US obviously gets affected, we get affected as well. The impact on us because trading globally is in dollars. So because of that, how the bonds are bought and the investors in our markets, potentially that's what happens. We were affected by our own elections. There was a wait and see for a couple of months in terms of investment. We think that with the GNU being established, there is level of confidence. We're hoping that we will be a safe market for people to run to in terms of the current global markets, because we still remain, as South Africa, one of the safest investment destinations. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, there's no need for me to move. Oh, there is a need. Yeah. No, thank you very much. The first question is from Mam Kize. Kabazel, you are right that people who have got depression are likely to get involved in some form of crime. But statistics show that it's 3.7% of men who are going through depression who gets involved in violent crime. When it comes to women, it's only 0.5% of women who do so. The reason that they take it serious is because it is still 3 times than in the normal population. Because in the normal population, men who get involved in crime are put at 1.2% and women at 0.2%. So for that reason. But what worries me the most, why I quote these figures, what worries me the most, and I've already discussed that with Minister of Police and already asked, are rather people who are on drugs, especially the new drug in the market called crystal meth. Because those, when they come to hospital, they are not like when you have smoked daha or, cocaine or what. They are psychotic, if you understand what I mean. In simple language, you say mad. They are coming in chains in hospitals, so much that some of their relatives refuse to take them. And I'm very serious about it, because we've been phoned so by many hospitals. What do we do? They say the state must see what to do with that person because of the violent crime they've seen. So I was telling the minister, we need to have a special drug squad in South Africa. A squad that specifically deals with drugs and specialize in it. Inside it, there will be health. A lot of professors, psychiatrists, health people, and police. And I really ask that we sit down and discuss that. Because I'm convinced that some of the things you see today is because of those drugs. The manner in which women and children are slaughtered, like, in a manner that you have never seen before. Yes, it's so inhuman. Where is this humanity coming from? Some of these people are on drugs. They are on crystal meth because it's there. Remember, crystal meth is methylamphetamine, which was there before in health because it was the most potent drug used for weight loss. If you wanted to slim, there was nobody who was going to be a stoodler without them wanting because of crystal meth. Yes, but the reason that it was banned, is because it had these side effects of producing violent people. They banned it. Now people have found a way to manufacture it, and only a drug squad can dismantle that. Otherwise, we are in big trouble as a country. Now, Shines, you know one positive story about NHI in the media. You're 100% correct. I've noticed that. Anyway. Yes, I've noticed that. Is it Nelly from Reuters? Yeah, Nelly. Yeah, the transitional mechanism under Section 57 is that it's phases. Phase 1 is from 2023 to 2026. We are in the middle of that phase 1. It's about the president has already signed an act. We don't have regulations yet. We need to do them. We need to establish quite a number of committees, ministerial advisory committee, committees on health technology. All that needs to be done. And including the fact that as a consequence of NHI becoming an act, at least 11 acts of parliament passed throughout ages have to be amended consequentially. The Medicine and Related Substance Act passed in 1965. It has to be amended. Occupational Disease and in Mines and Works Act passed in 1973. It has to be amended. Health Professions Act 1974, Dental Technicians Act 1979, Allied Health Professions Act 1982, Medical Schemes Act 1998, Mental Health Act 2002. All of those, including, last but not least, Traditional Health Practitioners Act 2007. They all need to be amended to be in line with the issue of national health insurance. So it's a whole lot of work. Your second question was an obstacle to NHI in national, in GNU. Yes. GNU. Yes. What I've heard is exactly what I said earlier. I heard all of them saying we are not against universal health coverage, but coming to say, but certain aspects are worrying us. And I'm saying everybody who say they are against NHI, there was an article which was sent to me by a prominent doctor who is now in Parliament, who was a president of Health Professions Council, presumably against NHI. I read it twice, and I said, but which area are against NHI here? I agree with him on most of the things he has written, but so 90% of the things, yes, here and there are smaller things on which you won't be on the same page. So the obstacles I'm talking about is people saying there are certain aspects I don't like. And I know in quite a number of legislations, people will say so. Junior, yeah, a very big statement. You said going out, is it an acceptance that there is no buyout for NHI? I want, yeah?
Buy-in.
Buy-in, sorry. Yes, yeah, buy-in, yeah? Buy-in, not buy-out, yes. You see, there is absolutely no scientific evidence that there is no buy-in for NHI. What you are seeing is people who are beneficiaries of the present system. That includes quite 99% of us in this room, if I'm not mistaken. That includes the media. Okay, you'll fall in the 1%. The 99%, yes, are the ones who are speaking. The real poor people who are beneficiaries have never spoken. You haven't heard them. Nobody is carrying their voice. My going out there is to give them a voice. That's number one. Number two, even before already, I've got many requests on my table of people who are saying, please come. We want to understand more about NHI because we have heard a lot in the media about it. We no longer know what the truth is. Because in the media, you have made up, as I'm saying, some sections of the media, let me make you homogeneous because you're not. But in some sections of the media, you have made up your mind. That's why when a judge declares Section 36 to Section 40 of the National Health Act passed in 2003, the headlines was about NHI being thrown out of court. I have to battle to tell you that this is not NHI, but it was already headlines because, in other words, there was already excitement that this thing is gone now. And it was done by the media, not ordinary people. So ordinary people are saying, come and explain. What is this? The other people are speaking, and they're speaking every day. Unfortunately, in the media, I mean, I have to say these things because I've noticed them. Anybody on any policy who is against the state, you give them the title expert. That's what you do in the media. Once you talk against the state, you are an expert on this. And they call you all the time. Other real experts that are not against the state are never called. Yes, for instance, yes, an expert on this and that. For instance, yes. Yeah, some girl is an expert on ANC. I accept that. So I'm not talking about it. Yes. So that is where the problem is. For instance, within the World Health Organization, there are people who are designers of this whole concept of universal health coverage. Because they were seeing, if you go to World Health Organization, they've got figures, as I'm speaking, of people around the world who were not classified poor in terms of the general classification of United Nations. You know, they are there in every country and globally, that this person is below the poverty, that line is poor, if you earn so many dollars per day, you know. The World Health Organization has got figures who were not classified poor, but because somebody got sick at home, they are suddenly classified poor. Because there is a thinking which is wrong here, that if I'm poor and unemployed, and somebody at home is diagnosed maybe with cancer, breast cancer, you know, lung cancer, prostate and all that, then because I'm poor, I cannot go to a private hospital. If they say that private hospital has got all facilities and it's next to my home. It's not true that poor people don't go. They go, but what they'll do, they'll sell the whole kraal full of cattle. They'll sell all their goats. They might even, yes, the World Organization has got figures of such people all around the world. They sell what, they cash in an insurance, a life insurance, they catch it in before time. They take a child out of university because they say your brother is dying, has got leukemia. And they were made to believe that the only place that can solve them, 100,000 rand, especially that the relationship between a patient and a doctor, it's not like the relationship between between a consumer, for instance, Mmamoloko, and a shopkeeper. If you get in a shop and the shopkeeper calls extremely high prices, you'll just say thank you. You go out next door and buy another pair of shoes. You'll do that. You won't do that in health. You won't, because based on what information? Even me, I'm a medical practitioner. If I go to any doctor because I'm having splitting headaches, puts me under MIR and all that and say you have got a tumor the size of a pin or what in your brain, I need to remove it. I need 200,000 rand before I even start. On what grounds am I going to argue? Even suspecting that, no, man, this guy. On what grounds? It's life. It's life. I'm threatened. I will even say, even if he's mad, let me just do it because... No, because I want to live. I'll just say, no, go on and look for 200,000. There are people who died on the table looking for that money, while relatives are looking for that money. So these are the things that needs to be explained to people out there because they don't have that information. On Saturday, I addressed 2 meetings. I left this NEC lekgotla. The SG allowed me, don't think I dodged. Because, yes, I went to Medunsa. All the medical students from all universities, representatives were getting there because they are now mobilizing them into the Samadu Union. From UCT, Stellenbosch. After I spoke, they said, Minister, please come to our universities. We're going to line you up. That's part of the reason why I'm going out. They said we are going to line you up because what you have told us today was not easily available to us. Then I went to Durban that evening to address specialists and doctors, health experts, not media experts, the real health experts, who are professors at universities. And I spoke and they told me, please develop a plan to start moving around. We need to understand these issues very much. So it's very important for me to go to make people understand. The third reason, as I've already told you, when a person says, look, I'm not against universal health coverage, but not in this form, surely that person is worth listening to. What form? It might be that it must something small, like when I was in Durban, they were saying, no, man, in this act, the minister seemed to be having lots of powers. I don't want lots of powers. I want NHI to go on. So if it is true, after sitting with them, they convince you that you have got lots of powers, why not listen to them? When we were establishing the office of the Umbat person, meant by Professor Makgoba, I had an altercation with the portfolio committee. They were saying, no, this is too much power, Minister. Why don't you give the power to Parliament? Because Parliament will choose a better person, where now you are going to choose, your comrades and all that. I argued with them, and I'm sorry from SABC, I'm very sorry, I apologize in advance. I asked them, because members of Parliament choose SABC boards. By that time, when you're arguing, they've already chosen 3 dysfunctional boards as members of Parliament. Boards that were completely dysfunctional, and say, why do you believe as members of Parliament, when it's you choosing, you choose better things, And yes, and they kept quiet, they allowed me, I chose Professor Makgoba. Everybody realized I was not misusing my power, especially after Livy's demeanor, because I knew him. Many of them did not know him. I don't even know who they were going to choose there. So these are the things which I want to debate with people. That when you say you don't want this part, when you say the minister have got many powers, which ones do you mean? It's not my aim to have many powers, you know. It's my aim that everybody must get health care that is affordable and available to all, regardless of socio-economic status. That's what NHI is. The issue of will litigation push back time frames? Litigation anywhere destroys whatever you are planning. You can't tell, you'll never know. But there is that possibility, which is very high. But we won't stop preparing. You are aware that in the media, because most of you have got an interest about NHI going away, the fact that Solidarity tried to stop the department from establishing a unit on NHI when they advertised 44 posts, the fact that Solidarity lost that case, I've never seen it in the media. Where the judge said, no, you can't stop the government from planning. I've never seen it anywhere. But the moment that another act which they thought is related to NHI is declared unconstitutional, you see it everywhere. So we don't know, but we are continuing to move. Mawande, yeah, you said, what is the intention of the roadshows to review? I think I've already answered that. The intention of this roadshow, I am being called, you know. Even Abafundisi, they've called me. And I went to go running to them because I want them to speak for NHI. Because the biggest spokesperson of NHI is no more, the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu. He once called me when he was in hospital in Cape Town. He said, Minister, I got very good care here because he was in a private hospital. Then he said, but when are all South Africans going to get this type of care? I kept quiet. He said, I'm asking about this NHI. This NHI, when is it coming? He then went on to say, Minister, my wife, Mmamoloko, had done what you call mammograph. Mammography is what you do when you check breast cancer. And he said she was charged 15,000 rand. Then he said, Minister, just tell me, if it was a woman from Khayelitsha, can you tell me what was going to happen? And I looked down again. He said, these are the issues that need to be resolved. Now, many people don't know about all those things. NCDs, my friend, he always phones me. Yeah, he's a big soldier. He's not joking. Especially diabetes. Look, NCDs, after we have done away with infectious disease, because we are going to do so anyway, are going to be the biggest problem in the world. On the African continent, because we are still having HIV, AIDS, cholera, and all that, now we are dealing with monkeypox and all that, we don't see the problem with these NCDs. In developed countries, I can tell you, it's a huge problem, especially that their populations are aging. Now, you are not going to defeat NCDs, cancer, you know, diabetes, high blood pressure. You're not going to defeat them with pills. Forget, it's not going to happen. There's no way that the world will win with pills. It's not like when we give pills to everybody who's HIV positive and eventually they no longer get infectious, HIV goes away. It's not like that. Diabetes is mine and mine only. And no matter how many pills I'm swallowing, I won't stop it from moving to other members of the population. So that won't be a good way of fighting them. We fight them as a population-wide battle. For instance, there's something here which you might not know. We have reduced the amount of salt we eat in 6 very common foodstuffs. In bread, brine in chicken, soups, spices, you know. We have reduced salt. I was still in health, we called industry, and told them that South Africans are said to be eating 4 times the amount of salt than is necessary. How do we stop it? And because anybody who does a kidney transplant, the Minister of Health has to sign. I saw many forms going past the table. Kidney transplant, oh man, what's happening to the people's kidneys, you know? In Gauteng alone by 2015, there were 500 people who were lining up for dialysis. Remember, dialysis, you must be dialyzed every day. Then I said, no man, but we can't leave this to go on. Experts said it's sold. We called the industry and said, let's start the regulation process. And they agreed. We reduced the first amount in 2016. and said we'll wait for another 3 years, we reduce the second amount. You are eating lesser salt now without knowing. We did it in stages to avoid a riot, you know, because people are going to go on a riot when they believe there's not enough salt there. We are avoiding a salt riot. Same as sugar. And in the media, you completely misdiagnosed it and say we are looking for money when we're doing a sugar tax. I didn't want any sense from that sugar tax. We were worried by exactly what you're talking about. The NCDs were exploding, cancer everywhere, because everybody's eating sugar, whether they like it or not. Sugar, which never used to be eaten in the past. We were putting brakes to say, oh, please, this is too much now. Not because we were needing the money. Now, lastly, on this issue, you are a diabetic, you know, my brother. There are 4 ways of treating diabetes in the world. The first one is lifestyle, diet. That depends on education. That's why I agree with you. We need to educate people. They must know that they can live without any medicine whatsoever. Just by diet, lifestyle, exercise is very important. When you fail there, it's then that you start popping pills. When you fail with pills, we start giving you injections. We poke you 3 times a day. That's not good life. Absolutely not by any standard. We start poking you 3 times a day. When that fails, we start changing your organs now. You must go around looking for a new kidney, transplant and all that. Surely nobody wants that. We've got to stop the things from happening, and that's education. However, on the issue of neighboring countries, my brother, hey, yeah, this is a tough issue. How do I answer it? Yeah? Yeah, but it affects health, you know, very much. Let me give you this example of what we're complaining about, because I remember even Makura, when he was a premier, he spoke about this issue. When I arrived in health in 2009, the very same year, I went to a SADC meeting in Swatini. When I arrived there, the minister came to me. He said, my brother, this is too much. There was a Swazi national who came to one of our private hospitals. He needed a laparotomy. A laparotomy is when they open your abdomen because there's something or they want to check something there. They charged him 500,000 rand. That's 2009, 500,000. After doing that laparotomy, the Swazi government paid. They've got a medical aid that paid. He went to the ward, got infected, and they say we need to open again. Right to Swaziland, they want another 250,000. You're going to do 750,000 rand for a laboratory. And they say, look, man, the Swazis have got a medical aid, not like ours. Because they are a tiny country, when one of their hospitals cannot treat you, they send you into South Africa via that medical aid. The medical aid pays for you. That means only the people they can't treat, because they can't just send everybody. Then they said, no, this medical aid is going to collapse. I said, why are you going to private hospitals? You don't have to. We've got academic hospitals there that can give you good care. So we made them sign a memorandum of understanding with Charlotte Matlek and Steve Biko. Even now, that process is still working. And they are a tiny country. Other neighbors don't do that. They just close their eyes and let people cross the border and say, you'll see to finish. You know? Yeah, if you don't have food and money, for goodness sake, your neighbor has got. Why don't you speak to your neighbor? Neighbor, we're hungry. Are you able to help? You don't just tell your kids, no. Lunchtime, just visit there. And you throw them away you throw them away to our neighbors and close your eyes. It's unfair. And I want to say this publicly, even though they are sensitive. When Popira Matua was being attacked by all and Sunday, during that period when she was attacked, she received a letter of a patient sent to South Africa by a GP in Zimbabwe. The lady has got cancer, stage 4 already, and is anemic. And he's sending and saying, please give that lady a pint of blood. In other words, one country asking another to give. Yes, I'll tell you why that is abhorrent to me. Blood is not manufactured. We get it from the population. There are human beings in Zimbabwe. They've got blood, lots of it, for that matter. Yes, they've got blood. All they need to do, if they don't have the technology of taking that blood, is to come South Africa and say, look, can you help us with people who are going to get people to donate blood in our country? Instead, they close their eyes and throw over the border. It's unfair. And part of the reason is that heads of states on this continent, and it's the only continent, when they are sick, they go to other continents, leaving their nationals alone. And we have asked that must stop. Okay. Okay, yeah, no. So they'll abandon me and run off. Yeah, the last one. Lunga, this is a very difficult question. When medical aid policy started in 1967, nobody could ask this question. When is this going to happen? At what stage? Well, you said, are you going to run free into Netcare? That's what you said. There are 3 ways for paying for health in the world. 3 ways. There's no other one. The first one is mandatory prepayment of health. Pay for health before the person is sick, but it's mandatory. The second one is voluntary prepayment. Pay for health before you are sick, but it's voluntary. That's what medical aid is. The second one is cash, or fee for service of out-of-pocket, which is regarded worldwide as the most primitive method of paying health, which is what we are doing mostly in South Africa. There's no free there. Yes, it's paid somewhere before you are sick. And NHI is mandatory prepayment. Medical aid is voluntary. Cash is out of pocket. It's outdated. We don't expect the world to go and live like that. So it's difficult to tell you now that this time will come. One thing for sure, we said NHI is not an event. It's going to be implemented. It might take up to 15 years before we arrive there, while we are busy implementing. It might take something like that. So it's not easy. It's going to be a lie for me. Even countries around the world which started long ago are still implementing certain parts. The UK from 1948, the Seguro Popular in Mexico from 2001, Brazil, Thailand, Norway, Australia, Finland, they are doing that. Americans, of course, they were delayed when Trump said, no, this Obamacare is nonsense. But countries start, and it's a lifelong thing. You are at no stage will you say, we've implemented NHI is over. It's not possible. Medical aids, the first policy started in 1967. Believe you me, go to all these medical aids. They change something every year. They change policies, they change schemes, others fall by the wayside, others rise, others merge. Then they will tell you, we no longer pay for this, we pay for that. We'll pay only if you come during the night, during the day you pay for yourself. Stories like those. So it's a lifelong thing. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's it, folks. I might just give you an inside foot when the president is closing. Give me a second.
What?
Blood bank NHI 1.
What blood bank? What blood bank NHI?